Hi, and welcome to the Women Birth Collective's Pregnancy and Postpartum Summit. I'm Melissa Chin Casey, and I'm so excited to talk to Sheila Sims Watson, midwife, community midwife, certified professional midwife, and licensed midwife. And she's also my midwife and my teacher. Thank you so much for being here, Sheila.
Yay! Thank you. Thank you. This is so exciting. I'm so proud of you. I'm
Oh,
so
thank
proud. This is
you.
so exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be able to bring your wisdom and all your good juicy birth tidbits into the summit because you've been such a big inspiration for me.
Right. But the
Yeah.
summit itself, it has so much good, juicy stuff from so many awesome women. So that's what's exciting, really
Ah,
exciting.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I would love to give a little intro so that
Okay.
people kind of get to know you a little bit.
Okay.
So Sheila started out her, I guess, career as a midwife in New Jersey by having her two babies with midwives. And
Mhm.
she began there kind of dabbling in childbirth education and looking into more into this whole birth world. And then she moved to the Blue Ridge Mountains in Virginia, and she studied with a traditional rural midwife there, up in the mountains, supporting people to give birth up in the rural areas. So
Mhm.
after that, she moved to California and practiced in Mendocino, California, where she earned her NARM, Certified Professional Midwife accreditation. And then she decided to continue with her studies. She moved to Florida, went to Miami-Dade College for their midwifery program, and she earned her license in midwifery in 2001. And she began supporting lots of families in South Florida who know and love her for her sweet care. But she didn't stop there. She went to FIU in 2010 and earned a master's in public health. So she's still supporting, well, maybe I should say she was still supporting lots of families in South Florida. And if you know Sheila, you love her. So that's a little bit about Sheila.
Oh, thank you. Thank you,
Hmm,
Melissa.
thank you. I would love to sort of maybe just start out with why midwifery and why the way that you kind of empower and uplift families. Like what was it? Why? What's your why?
I've, it was the why is the way that the care that I received when I was pregnant with my babies, and it made so much sense, and it worked, and I just felt like, every woman should have that opportunity. They may not want it or whatever, but have that opportunity to have a midwife and have midwifery care. So it was modeled to me. It was the way I was taken care of for both of my babies, and my pregnancies. It was modeled to me, and it made so much sense. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I love that you say that it was modeled because we were having a debate if midwifery is the first oldest profession in the world or if it was the second oldest profession.
I've
And
heard those questions before, and
yes,
no, I think it's the first oldest, but you know, yeah.
okay, okay, I feel like it might have been the second.
Or the second. Yeah, both
But
were women professions, though, right?
oh, right, yes, that's right, that's true. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
maybe the first. The thought that I have is that sort of like continuity and that ancestry of midwifery and how sort of not just midwifery, but sort of how when we support each other to give birth and we support each other as women in community, we start to get initiated into this like way to love and care for one another. And
Yeah,
um, I know you've passed it down to me, and I've seen it happen with many families that we've cared for, where that
right.
person, that woman who gave birth now becomes a doula, or now becomes
Mm,
a childbirth educator, or a lactation
mm,
consultant, or just
right.
a really good friend.
It's always planting seeds, right? We always are planting that seed in some way, shape, or form that, this woman somehow or other is going to support another woman in some way, whether it's she becomes a midwife or, as you said, a doula or a lactation consultant. In some way, women supporting women,
Yeah.
planting that seed and watering it, right? Always
Yes.
watering it. Yeah. That's
Yeah, and
important.
spinning the web, that's another way I've heard it, spinning the web of women and just creating that network of women. And one of the
Yeah.
things I love about midwifery is it really is like a feminine and a woman's way to care for one another. Whereas, sometimes in the mainstream, it's kind of hard to find that, all that good wisdom and all that good support.
Right. Yep. You have to dig for it sometimes, to find that, to really find it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's a good time to ask the question, what is midwifery care like? So if I have no idea, say I'm pregnant and I show up and I'm trying to decide between, am I going to go to a doctor and I've heard of midwives? What's the difference? What's midwifery care like? What do you offer in terms of prenatal care, birth, and postpartum care?
Yeah, I always like to feel that, this woman is an active participant in her care, right? We're co-creating a relationship here, right? It's not all about what I say you need to do, or my voice isn't the only one that's important, but that woman's voice also, has value and should be heard. There's a little thing I have in my office. It talks about children should be seen and believed, and heard and seen and believed, or something like that. And I often
Yeah.
feel the same way, that your voice is what you have to say, about your well-being or not well-being, whatever, needs to be listened to, respected, heard, and believed. I think also, so an active participant. I don't live with you, so that when we're together for that 1 hour and we talk about, and you get on the scale, and we look at whatever that number is, it's telling as to whether or not in between that time, you have been, you've been nourishing yourself, food wise or something, or not, or over. So, it's the time that we have together where you're an active participant. And when you leave, then, we have co-created something that's going to continue until we see each other again. And I think that active participant, you got to do the work too. I'm not going to do it all for you.
Exactly. Yeah, it's great to start with that, just that concept of co-creating something together and really working together even when you're not together.
Yeah. That's a nice way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what you said. I think I'm repeating your words. But so you have people come in, it sounds like for an hour, you said, and
Right. We usually set aside an hour of time, and I like to think of that time sort of in, in these little, circles. So a lot of that first part of our time is sort of, just checking in, right? Checking in, and in terms of, what's been going on in this woman's life since the last time we saw each other. It's just kind of just checking in, and for me, it's important to deal with, like an example. Yesterday, I had someone come in, and body language was such a lot, and she, I could tell that there was something that was amiss. So, we spent some time just gathering information, just talking first. And it led to one thing, led to another, and a little bit of emotions. And so for me, it would have created no value to have taken her blood pressure like the moment she got in, right?
Yeah.
There was already something that was, it wouldn't have created any value. So that first part of it, it's just gathering information, just sharing and gathering information on what's going on in this woman's life since the last time we were together. And then some suggestions and recommendations from me, and also from her. Well, what have you tried that has worked? Or, what do you think maybe you could do that would be helpful? So it's that exchange, that gathering of information, checking in with your body, her checking with her body, and me also. Always like to ask, so, what's your baby doing? Where are you feeling big movements? Where are you feeling little movements? And really just putting her in touch with with her body, having her, she has to scan it also and sort of go through it, you know, and sometimes we'll go
Yeah.
through the list.
Yeah, it sounds like when you're asking that person for, what do you think will help? What have you done? What's the baby doing? What are you feeling? It sounds like you're really reinforcing that idea of embodiment and getting in touch with your body, getting in touch with your instincts, getting in touch with your intuition, and then trusting, right? Learning how to sort of trust what you feel, and maybe you don't know if you trust it right away, but the act of practicing that throughout the pregnancy in every visit with you, it just becomes stronger and stronger.
Right, right. Yeah, I really feel that women know, right? And if you give them that place and that space and that opportunity to really check in with their knowing, access it and know what they know, then yeah, when we're in labor, I don't have an ultrasound machine there, it's like, so I'm like, so what's the baby doing? And they can, oh, I feel the baby moving down a little bit more, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because our time together has reinforced that knowing and that ability to really, check in with your body on many levels, right? Just not only just physically what I'm feeling, but what, on emotionally or spiritually. So, it's on, we work on many different levels, just not
Yeah.
what's happening in the belly, or, and I also feel like, we do those things like take blood pressure and, weigh in and those things like that. But they're also, it's gathering information, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
just, it's another means of sort of gathering. That blood pressure is telling us something. It's important for me to, when we do that blood pressure, that information is given to this woman, right? It's just not take that blood pressure and then put the cuff away and say nothing at all.
Mm-hmm.
I've had that happen to me with providers, and I've had to say, "Excuse me, could you let me know what those numbers are? I mean, I think I
Mm-hmm.
can handle it, right?" So it's
Yes.
always important, whatever information that I may gather about your body, that I then give that back to you. And does that sound like that's your norm? Is that those numbers? Those sound like, so it's always, though it's giving us some information, but it's either to help reaffirm what we already know, that this is all is normal, or it's another way of gathering information and then having a dialogue about it, right?
Yeah. And then it does this third really magical thing, which it kind of educates and empowers that person to just go forward in their life, knowing that they can learn new things about their body, knowing that they can always say, hey, my blood pressure was this when I was pregnant, and now it's this now that I'm not
Yeah,
pregnant, or 10
yeah,
years later, and
yeah.
understand it's not the unknown anymore, right?
Right. Yeah, yeah. It's
Mm.
always in, yeah, from that aspect. Anything that's done to you or your body or your baby, it's important that you know that, and that are informed of what's
Yeah.
being done, and that you consent to it also, right?
Yes, absolutely. I'd love to sort of talk about the pelvic exam if you want to talk about that, and consent, because you do the pelvic exam in such a respectful way,
Mm,
and you're always checking in. Do you want to speak a little bit about like our
yeah,
sovereignty in our bodies and our rights to consent and things like
yeah,
that?
yeah. Early on, when I lived in Virginia, I worked with a group called Women's Health Consultants. And they basically, what we did was we taught breast and pelvic exams from a woman-centered perspective. So
Mm-hmm.
we actually taught medical students. So it was great for me to, even just the language, how important the language is. So, that in that exam room, this isn't a bed that this woman's laying on, it's an exam table. But for me, when we're doing any kind of, breast pelvic exams, again, this woman's an active participant in this care. So, you know, even before we, you know, I will usually say, let them know I'm about to touch you, and this is my hand, and my hand is touching you, really wanting permission more than anything else, really wanting permission. And I've had instances where for some women, you know, even being able to introduce the speculum, right? Have them introduce the speculum. It's, you know, you could do it. You could do it. That can happen. Introducing the speculum, or if I am, introducing the speculum, being conscious of, you know, trying to look at her face and see what, you know, is she just staring off at the ceiling, disconnected from this, or, you know, just trying to maintain that context. Because sometimes, you know, with those, you know, public and PAP exams, we just kind of disconnect and sort of, right? But in whatever way, you know, being conscious of what will help, you know, this woman in this experience. And seeing your cervix, right? I remember the first time I saw mine, and that was like, wow, you know. So having that opportunity, I've got a mirror. I always have the mirror right by. If they want to see it, then they can, and if they don't, they don't have to. But for some women that see their cervix, and that's where your baby came out of and stuff, it's usually really, sometimes it's even like, you know, tearful almost sometimes, you know, it's just so juicy that it, you know, it's like, oh my God, that's my cervix, right? You know, because it's hidden, we don't see it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, all those little aspects, I think, of the exam, again, you know, this woman becomes an active participant in this experience. And even, you know, when we're doing things like the vaginal cultures and things like that, you know, even someone just coming in for a vaginal culture, you don't have to get onto the exam tape, take off your clothes and have me do this vaginal culture. It's not rocket science. Women can do it. So I usually, you know, here's the swab, explain how it's very simply done. And then this woman usually heads off to the restroom and does her vaginal culture. And it's just, wow, the power, and, you know, bringing me back that little vial with that little swab in it. I did it, right? It seems, you know, and checking urine also. I often tell women, I'm like, you know, we never know what they do with our pee when we leave it there in a cup. They could be selling it and making lots of money from our pee, right?
Yeah.
So it's very simple. It's not rocket science, you know which, you know, specific things we're looking for in terms of, you know, the urine, and you can look at other things if you want to on that, you know, strip of stuff on the can, but it's not rocket science. So women can pee in the cup, they can dip their pee, they can read it, and it's like, wow, it just reaffirms normal for them, right? All these things that they can do on there. It's also just, you know, constantly reinforcing normal, right? Reinforcing normal, reinforcing normal, reinforcing normal, you know. And in some practices, the women will do their own blood pressure with the hand cuff, right? And all of these things just, you know, they're active participants, and it's reinforcing normal, right?
Yeah, and it's also educating them, because one of the things I love about the urine sticks is that it takes a couple lessons before someone gets it. They're like, come here and explain this to me. And what they end up learning is like, we're looking at this to see if you have sugar in your urine. We're looking at this to see if you have blood in your urine. We're looking at this to see if you have nitrates and nitrites and traces of like a UTI. And so putting that all together, and they can, I mean, it's just so much power in being able to say, I can check if this is going wrong, and this is going wrong, and this is going wrong, and I can then bring it back into balance.
Right. Yep. You're more apt to do something about it because I checked it, and I know this is off, or this is normal. This is that's a little bit off. Okay, so yeah, maybe I need to do XYZ, or stop doing XYZ, or, you know, find a balance or something. But it does. It gives them that power. It's, you've been educated. Nobody can now just sort of, you know, off the cuff tell you whatever, right? So it does. It's that educational piece that then gives you way more you know, power in terms of, you know, your body and your being, you know.
Yes.
So
Yes,
it's,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah, I like that.
Hmm. So, um, if I go to a midwife as opposed to a doctor, am I going to be able to have everything done, you know, with the midwife, or do I also need a doctor? What are the, you know, are you going to be able to do my blood and ultrasounds and things like that?
Yep. We got it all. We can handle it all, right? So, you know, midwives in Florida, we're considered independent practitioners, right? So we can provide that full scope of midwifery care. All of your prenatal care is done with the midwife. The midwife can order, and most of the time, the midwife will do blood or order the blood, and then I think the beautiful thing is that, you know, you are informed beforehand, you know, what blood tests are recommended at specific times in your pregnancy, right? It's time for blah de blah test, and informed about, you know, what this test is testing, some of the risks, the benefits, how to best prepare for it, and to decide whether that this test is something that feels like it's right for you and your family or important for you. So that piece of it is important, that educational piece about, because there's a lot of testing out there that's expensive, not necessary, and a slippery slope into interventions, I think.
Hmm.
But so your, you know, midwifery care includes all of the blood work, and once those tests come back, an explanation, right? We are looking at this blood work together and what these results say. What does this say, you know, and why is this important, right? And if there is something that is concerning, what's the best way to sort of deal with it and handle it, you know, whether there's some alternative or holistic ways of dealing with it, or whether it needs something more. So all of the blood work and vaginal cultures and PAPs, all of that. Ultrasound is part of the care. Again, you know, it's something to consent to, whether or not ultrasound is, when it's done, or how often it's done, or all of those things that is important, and it's a part of the midwifery care. So in some practices, there will be the opportunity to meet with the consulting OB, right? There's a consulting OB. As long as a woman has no risk factors, we do an initial risk assessment when that woman comes into care. If her risk score is 0, 1, or 2, it means she's low risk, and she doesn't have to see the backup OB, right? If there are some risk factors, meaning your score is 3 or above, then there is a visit with the consulting OB, and together the midwife and the OB will review whatever those risk factors are, and everyone will decide whether or not what's the next steps, right? In terms of this woman being signed off for a home birth. So, you know, all along the way, this woman's involved in it. But if there are no risk factors, you get through the entire care with a midwife, with just your midwife, and that works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the going through the labs and the results, and you know, all that education that comes along with the way that you care for women. It's just so empowering and uplifting. And so if the OB and the midwife decide that home birth is not exactly right, and that a hospital birth is probably the better place, do people still get to see the midwives, or would they transfer into an OB's care?
Yeah. So in my experience, in my practice, then this woman generally continues her care with her midwife, right? And that care often, you know, a piece of it that's held is that emotional piece, because, you know, perhaps we've been planning for this home birth, and for whatever reason, maybe the placenta previa, whatever, you know, home birth is no longer an option, but the care is continued, right? the midwife. That's been my experience. And then it holds two pieces. We're not only, you know, maintaining, you know, this pregnancy and a healthy pregnancy, but there's an emotional piece to it. We're preparing now for a hospital birth when we were preparing for a home or out of hospital birth. So our care and our relationship still continues. And usually, I mean, times have changed, right? You know, with the last 2 years, and allowing less people in the hospital. And so I'm hoping that's changing again. But often the midwife will accompany this woman, you know, into the hospital with this hospital birth as a support or an advocate, right? Not attending the birth, or the OB is now the attending, but that the midwife is still there providing that, you know, that emotional support, and that's continuing to educate, right? And provide this one what she needs for that hospital birth.
I love that. I love that. I always wish that people at least have 2 visits with a midwife, even if they have a great relationship with their OB. I mean, if nothing else, just for the time that you get to spend understanding your body, and the time you get to spend asking questions and kind of discovering and moving all that energy. You know, I feel like that talking and exploring and really asking all your questions and understanding all the different scenarios moves a lot of energy, which is just great for opening up your body for birth, you know, whether that's emotionally or spiritually or energetically, that movement. Yeah,
totally. Yep, because there's so many moving pieces to it, and you know, there's just lots of places that we're growing and expanding in so many ways, not just in the belly, but in our heart. And postpartum is another time where, you know, even for those women who may have their baby at the hospital, having midwifery postpartum care, I think, is like the gold standard, right?
Yeah.
You know, because then that, you know, that midwife is still caring for and still providing and still checking in on this mom and this new baby. And, you know, my teacher, you know, she said to me, like, birth happens, you know, I mean, we know that birth happens. Where you're really needed often is in that postpartum time, right? After this woman has given birth, to really provide that, you know, that support and that care and normalize things for this mom and this baby.
Yeah, and give her that timely care, like, because I find that postpartum, it's, you know, day 1 can feel like an eternity. Day 2 can feel like a whole nother lifetime. Day 3 postpartum, it's like, oh my gosh, what is, you know, there's just so many things that could come up and be, that need your attention instantly. And to be able to have that midwife come and not give you all that information beforehand, but actually be there to support you when you need it, it's just so great.
Yeah. And to normalize things, because, you know, and with each baby, there's you know, we're different. It's not the same, you know, you're not the same person you were when you gave birth to, you know, baby number 1 or 2 or 3. Each one is different, and carries with it its own, I think, needs and special circumstances. So, you know, I mean, I've been with one woman, and, you know, it was baby number, I don't know, 6 or something like that. And, you know, she felt like, you would think I would know. And it's like, it's okay to not know, right?
Yeah.
It's a different baby. You haven't had the relationship with this baby, you know. Yeah, this one cries more, or doesn't want to be on the breast as more, or wants to be on the breast all the time, whatever. So it's, you know, we sometimes think that we're, you know, because we've had 1, 2, or 3 that, you know, I'm supposed to know, but it's okay to not know. And I think it's in that place of not knowing, then we really open the door to be able to, you know, to discover something new or more of unknowing or something, you know.
Oh, it's great. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That place of discovery is in the unknown.
Yeah, for sure. So postpartum is another place where, you know, and for those, you know, women who have midwifery care throughout prenatally, and then the labor and the birth, there's that continuity. It's just a part of it, you know. The pregnancy, and on the other side of that is that postpartum care, and it kind of matches, right? That same kind of, intensive kind of, care of checking in and, reaffirming the normalcy and being an active participant in her care. Yes, you can breastfeed this baby,
Mhm.
I can't breastfeed this baby for you, so you're going to have to do it, right?
Sure, sure. And there's so many little tips and tricks and little resources that the midwife can call on if the
Yeah.
midwife doesn't know. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what's one thing that I think is beautiful is that there is an exhausting of all of the resources that we have for our community.
Yeah.
And there's also an acceptance of, okay, you don't want to breastfeed, there's no judgment.
Right.
Or maybe
Right.
you do want to breastfeed, but you're deciding that it's not the right time. And there's no
Right.
judgment in that.
Right, right. I've seen that.
Mhm.
Thank you. I've seen that with mama, no, baby number 3, and the last 2 were, a year and a half apart or so. And it was like, you know what? This is hard, you
Mhm.
know? So I just, I've made a different decision for this one. I'm going to breastfeed less than the 2 years or, 12 months or whatever.
Yeah,
And yeah, and no judgment.
no
Yeah.
judgment. I want to just point out that something that I see on social media these days is a lot of judginess. And I know, like with some of the people that we've cared for together, it's almost like they don't want to tell us that they're not going to breastfeed, and when they finally admit it, it's like, oh, come here, baby, it's fine, we
Yeah.
don't have any judgment for you. But it seems like
Right.
the whole world has all this judgment about what we're supposed to do and how we're supposed to do it, and it's just too
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. It doesn't create any value at all for anyone. And so, I think and again, not trusting that this woman knows what might be
Mhm.
best for her and her family, in this situation. Right. So
Yes.
if that's what we've, kind of fed her or supported her with throughout this time, and then if then when we start judging when she makes a decision because this feels right for me, then we're not walking our talk, really, kind of.
Mhm.
So
Yeah,
yeah, it doesn't create any value at all.
it doesn't. Thank you for saying that. Does it create value or does it not create value? That's a great way
Yeah.
to look at things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
So, as far as the birth goes, I know one of the big questions is home birth safe? And what does a midwife do exactly? I mean, are you bringing over some potions to someone's house? Like, can you talk about the tools that you carry and maybe the skills that you carry into a birth and how and why they are comparable actually to what you get at a hospital. Obviously, at a home birth, you're not going to have a cesarean or pharmaceutical drugs or anything, but the skills are there, and some of the tools are there.
Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, generally there's usually, 2 full-fledged midwives at a birth, and I often say, the eyes and the hands of 2 full-fledged midwives is just as good as any ultrasound or any machine, whatever, right?
Mhm,
You know,
mhm.
but when we come in for a birth, we come with everything that we need to maintain, a safe and healthy birth. So we've got our birth bags, right? And within these birth bags, it's got, uh, some medical stuff, gloves and gauze and things like that, and syringes and things. But it's also got, our herbs and our homeopathics, and it's got our, heating packs and, things that we know can also be very helpful, at a birth. We've got our birth bags that, encompass all those things. We've got to come with oxygen, and the tools and the things that we need should there need to be a resuscitation. That's why it's always 2 midwives there at a birth. And I always like to think that, our senses are really our real main tools,
Mhm.
like our eyes. What am I seeing when I'm there? What am I smelling? What am I hearing? What am I feeling with my hands? And what's my heart sort of feeling? Those are often those real tools that, can sort of be very beneficial, you know, at a birth, those midwives' tools, I think, hands. But, you know, we do come with this, what we need to maintain a safe, healthy birth. We're listening to baby's heart tones, right? And, you know, according to our law, there's these things, the blood pressure and the temperature and the pulse and checking, you know, heart tones and all of that, you know, within a rhythm of the time that we're there, you know, but also that, you know, that listening to that heart tone is not just counting the beat, but, you know, that's this baby's way of speaking to us. So what is this? What else am I hearing? And what else am I feeling this baby is telling me, right? Or saying to me when I'm listening to heart tone. So it's not just on that one level of count the number of beats, but, you know, does it sound far away? Does it sound very close up? Does it sound muffled? Is there a little skip? Is, you know, all those little parts of it, you know, you know, that midwife's intuition has to really also be in her birth bag and a part of her tools. So, you know, we come prepared, you know, with our bags of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, we set up, you know, so that things are accessible and what we need is right where we need it, and know how to get it. And sometimes
right. I know the emergency table is always ready, right? We've got the emergency medicine to stop bleeding. We've got the emergency medicine to resuscitate the baby, or the tools anyways to resuscitate. Those are always ready to go.
They're always there, and we know where they're at. And well before we head to the birth, we're checking to make sure we've got our IV fluids. I've got whatever, the Pitocin for stopping births and a little bit of Methergin and whatever other things that I need, you know, should an emergency arrive, or the things that I need just to maintain the, you know, the safe unfolding of this birth. So yeah, it's all set up and you know, orderly so that we can move in the way that we need to move, as quickly or taking our time if we need to, because we have done that. We've set up so that we can, you know, this birth can unfold in the way that it needs to unfold.
And those ears are such an important tool, and those eyes are such an important tool. Sometimes when people are trying to decide between a home birth, when I have friends should I have a home birth or should I have a hospital birth? One of the things I like to tell them is that midwives are experts in how birth unfolds, because we've observed and witnessed so many of them. We know the sounds, we know the movements, we can see when the mom's body is feeling stuck, or maybe the baby's head is a little hooked onto the hips a little way, and we know how to, you know, move the hips and sort of give advice and recommendations and suggestions. Whereas in the hospital, you don't really know how many natural births that doctor has attended. And if they have attended natural births, how long were they in the room for? You know, what part of that process of birth do they really understand and can help you through?
Yeah, when you sit with labor, then you can, you know, the unfolding of it, you know, it's a story. And, you know, often that story, you know, may look the same with, you know, different maybe deviations to it. But once you sit with labor, you kind of, you get to know labor and how, and, you know, its movement towards birth. But as you say, I mean, with doctors, most of the time they're called when the baby is ready to be delivered. So, you know, all of the process before that, most of the time they're not privy to it unless the nurses are calling to get, you know, something from them or give some update or something like that. So, you know, midwives sit with labor. So, you know, it's really different, because we can see the nuances and the changes. And when she starts rocking a little bit different, it's like, that baby's getting down. She's getting down, you know, and to be able to move into the positions that feel right for you. It's coming from you. Like, I need to be on all fours, or I need to get this leg up a little higher, or whatever, it's coming from that woman. And it's not, that she's just being told what she has to do, or confined in some way, shape, or form, like to the bed or whatever,
Mm-hmm. I remember being in a birth with you. Go ahead and finish your thought, and then I'll talk about this part.
That was
Okay.
it.
I remember being in a birth with you, and the woman was kind of pushing, and I think she was pretty complete. Maybe she was 9 centimeters when we had last checked her or something like that, and she was pushing, and at one point you were like, "Nope, I think there's some cervix in the way," and it was just the sounds she was making and sort of how she was backing off of the pushing, and you could see it in her body. And you were right, there was some cervix in the way, and just to be able to know that, it's such a superpower. And the continuity is a superpower. Like you said, being there for the labor, for the birth, for the newborn transition, and the postpartum.
Yeah.
One of the things that really stood out was I helped my sister in the hospital. She had a preterm labor. And I remember the doctor, the OB, didn't know what to do with the baby, right? I mean, that's not their job. Their job is to deliver the baby. And then there's a whole team of neonatologists who are helping the baby to now transition. And so there were like 4 people watching to see if the baby was breathing right and if they needed any emergency help or anything like that. But one thing I think is a superpower of midwives is the transition, that you can go from, helping this baby out into now helping this baby transition into breathing through lungs and breathing, the air around them, and sort of get ready to be strong in the world.
Yeah.
And I remember you told me once that when you care for a mom and baby, they're one unit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They are. Yeah. It was hard for me. I remember during some of the my training here in Florida at a birth center, because there's one person on baby and there's one person on mom. And so once the baby is born, you're supposed to, if you're a mom, you stay on mom. And I remember getting my hand hit one time because I wanted to check on the baby and stuff. And it was like, so to separate them was just like, oh, that's hard for me.
Mm-hmm.
They are one, and I was just thinking of, a little bit also, Melissa, like one of the, I think about like the hallmarks of midwifery care, right?
Uh-huh.
And I often say, there's these hallmarks of midwifery care. And one of them is, as we said, educating this woman, is that she's an active participant in her care, that education and the time that's spent. And the other thing, I think of them as 4. One of the second hallmarks of midwifery care is informed consent. And nothing should be done to you, your body, or your baby without you being informed about what's being done and that you consent to it, right? And that's, that should carry on, so that when this woman is a mom, when she's had her baby, even with her pediatrician or other providers, that they realize nothing's done to me or my baby without you informing me, and I consent. I talk about the third hallmark is that we create an emergency care plan, right? There are no guarantees. There are no guarantees. And I'm not going to stand there and say, oh, I'm going to guarantee you're going to have a 3-hour labor and you're going to be at home. We can't do that.
At exactly 40 weeks.
Right, exactly 40 weeks. So we create this emergency care plan so that we have it. And most of the time we don't have to use it. But if we do, we've created it. So if an emergency arises, we're not running around like chickens with our heads cut off trying to figure out where we're going or who we're calling or anything like that. Hallmark of midwifery care is an emergency care plan. And then I feel like one of the biggest ones, or the 4th hallmark, is creating a relationship, right? Mm-hmm. We're about to do something that's very sacred and very special and very intimate, which is the birth of your baby. So it behooves us to not be strangers. And so taking that time to create a relationship in our prenatal times together, right? So that we're not, we're not strangers. We you know, that relationship that we build is built on trust and respect, right? And so once that relationship is created, there's that trust, there's that respect and love. We often fall in love, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then, you know, we can move through anything that we need to move through. There's that trust that when this mama says to me, no, this doesn't feel, I don't want, so I have to trust. And if, you know, in that point we get to in a labor and I'm like, it's time to poop or get off the pot, right? Or something like that.
Yeah.
That this woman trusts that, okay, you know, I mean, Sheila's got, you know, okay, when her voice gets there, or there's that trust, right? And it's always coming from a place of respect and love. So I feel like, you know, for anyone thinking about midwifery care, you know, those hallmarks, you're not going to find those hallmarks, I don't feel, you know, outside of midwifery care or in, you know, in obstetrical care, you know.
Yeah.
And they're important ones. And, you know, the education, informed consent, that emergency care plan, and that relationship that you create with your midwife, you know, which is, you know, love, respect, and trust.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. I have one last question for you to be quick. I know you're a busy midwife with lots to do.
Oh, I'm just going to get some lunch after this.
Okay, good. A little self-care, a little nourishment.
Yeah.
My question is what would you like to see in the future? I mean, I know we've talked about the politics of, you know, Medicaid reimbursements and VBACs and how the climate can change from one day to the next. And we've talked about, you know, getting the moms involved and the parents and families involved and, you know, changing the face of reproductive health care and things like that. What would you like to see in the future?
You know, off the top of my head, and it might seem flip or anything like that, I would like to see more midwives. I think the world needs midwives. I think there should be a midwife on every corner, on every, you know, that there's at every community, that there's, you know, on every other block or every block, that there is a midwife or a midwife center. You know, I just think the world needs more midwives. I'd like to see more midwives. I really would. That would be, yeah. All those other things are important and come along, but at the top of the list, I think we need more midwives.
Yes.
I'm always planting seeds.
Let's make this as a seed. Let's make it happen.
Yes, my love. Yes.
Thank you so much, Sheila.
Oh, thank you, Melissa. This has been fun. Thank you.
My pleasure.
All right.
All right. I'll see you soon.
I'll see you later. Ciao, ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye.